So, I just saw the latest MCU movie, Deadpool and Wolverine, and I really liked it. Finally, man, after over a year, since probably Guardians 3, which came out last summer, we finally have another really good MCU project. Seriously, looking at the wiki page for the projects that came out between that movie and this one, most of them were fine at best and just god-awful at worst. Like, so bad, you'd think they were almost allergic to being interesting. Some were just never even given a chance or watched at all. I can personally attest to that. But finally, after much anticipation, we finally have the highly marketed, long-awaited return of Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. And I can tell you, after seeing this movie, Marvel's back, baby. At least until the next project where people inevitably claim that the MCU is dead. And looking at the wiki page for Phase 5, that might not even be that long from now. But back to Deadpool and Wolverine, this is just one of those movies where you just knew it would do well for the MCU. Not only is it the MCU's first attempt at an R-rated project... What? What do you mean there's already been an adult-rated MCU project? This isn't the first? Well, what project was the first?
Marvel Studios Echo.
Okay, well, on the subject of the MCU projects that people actually watched, Deadpool and Wolverine was the first adult-rated project in the MCU. It featured two returning and beloved characters from the greater extended universe of Marvel, and it was slated to be the only movie release of the year, which makes you think it'll be worth it if it's the only release, and it's also a far cry from when they were releasing like 3 movies a year up until like a year ago. The fact that all these circumstances were present for this movie were pointing towards the fact that it was going to be good and audiences would respond well. And looking at how well it's been received by audiences so far after only 1 day in theaters, and seeing as how it's already out box officed the last MCU movie in 1 day compared to that movie's entire theatrical run, really speaks volumes about how if you just make good, fun movies about good, fun characters, this whole narrative about superhero fatigue and the MCU dying kind of evaporates quickly. And if you want to look for good, fun characters, Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool is a great place to start. A Deadpool movie is almost guaranteed to print money, almost in the same way a Spider-Man movie is. Plus, you add in a superhero movie legend like Hugh Jackman reprising his role of Wolverine after seemingly retiring years ago, and you got a recipe for a summer blockbuster box office smash hit. Speaking of smash hits, the opening to this movie let me know immediately that this was going to be a good movie. You know, like how when you heard that opening monologue in the Batman movie 2 years ago, you knew that it was going to be a good Batman movie? Or when you saw that opening to the first Guardians movie with Chris Pratt dancing and singing to Come and Get Your Love? This is kind of the same thing where you know within the first 10 minutes that you're gonna have a great time. I am not lying when I tell you I could not wipe the smile off my face in the first few minutes of this movie. It was the only point during this movie, and probably since the final battle in Endgame, where for several minutes straight I was just sitting there smiling and laughing. I'm watching it again right now as I'm writing the script, and I'm just smiling like a doofus. Seriously, if you're going to see this movie, if nothing else, do not show up late and miss the beginning. The opening kind of sets the tone for the rest of the movie. Even if you don't like the plot, or the effects, or the villain, or the pacing, you're going to have fun. This movie almost guarantees that you'll have fun. And like I've said many times before, at this point in the MCU, with as many misses as it's had, that's all I really want at this point, is to just have fun. I just want the MCU movies to give me a fun movie experience. I don't even expect them to be great anymore. Just at least make them fun. And apparently Marvel/Disney knows this too now, because in classic Deadpool fashion, this movie is about as meta as we've come to expect all Deadpool movies to be. And slight joke spoiler, Wade Wilson even mentions in this movie that the MCU has kind of gone downhill in recent years. I usually don't like it with this meta stuff when Marvel kind of winks at the camera and the audience like, hey, we know you're watching a superhero movie and we know what you're thinking. But because that's kind of Deadpool's whole shtick, I usually excuse it for these kinds of movies. And speaking on Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool, it is no surprise to anyone that Ryan Reynolds absolutely kills it as this character. You can really tell these Deadpool movies are almost like his babies, like total passion projects. That's a sex joke, get it? Because when you make babies, it requires, like a lot of passion. Okay, maybe I've spent a little too much time with Deadpool over the past few days. But yeah, Reynolds' love for these movies and this particular superhero really shines through in his performance. And as far as his partner in crime fighting is concerned, you can really tell poor old Hugh Jackman is really giving his all in reprising his role as Logan, from the high-intensity fights to the surprising down-to-earth emotional moments. Honestly, I just feel like this man has been doing this shit for way too long. I mean, I felt that way back when Logan, the 2017 movie, came out. You can just see the wear and the gray on his face from having to do this type of training and activity for 10 years longer than he probably should have. That brings me also to the hesitancy I had personally on seeing him return as the Wolverine, because I remember when the announcement first came out that Jackman was going to come out of retirement and reprise this role once again. I remember my initial feelings on it were not all that positive. Just because I had seen the movie Logan and thought that it was such a fitting end for such a long run as a superhero. I felt like they had closed that chapter beautifully, and I was totally okay with that being the last time we saw Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. And the fact that this movie sort of just brings him back out of the blue almost minimizes that movie and that ending. There are still people out there who think bringing back Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark/Iron Man is the best move for Marvel without any consideration for the storytelling damage that it would do to the cinematic universe. So many projects that come after Endgame center around the fact that Tony Stark is gone forever, and just bringing RDJ back so easily would completely destroy any emotional significance those movies or Avengers Endgame had as a whole. Okay, so I wrote that last sentence that I just said into the script a few hours ago, and right now I just saw the announcement at Comic-Con that RDJ is going to be returning to the MCU, not as Iron Man, but as Doctor Doom in the next Avengers movie. I swear I did not plan that at all. I feel like the universe just sensed my apathy towards RDJ returning to the MCU the moment I put it in the script and decided to just act immediately on that. I mean, I figured if Kang the Conqueror didn't work out, it would probably be somebody like Doctor Doom or Galactus that would be the new Thanos, just based on the rumors that have been flying around for the past few years. So fuck me, I guess. What do I know about storytelling? We don't have to say goodbye to anybody. They'll just keep coming back for the right amount of money because Marvel needs to keep relying on the same actors to save their franchise. Also, I'm more so pissed that they didn't cast Mads Mikkelsen because I think he would have been the perfect Doctor Doom. Anyways, so yeah, because of that reason I mentioned before about when you have a movie being a fitting ending, you really shouldn't taint that in any way by bringing the main actor back. God damn it. I was really hesitant on Hugh playing Wolverine once more, but after seeing his performance in this movie and particularly how well he worked with and played off of Ryan Reynolds, I can say that I am glad he was in this movie. Those two's dynamic just comes across as so authentic and genuine in this movie that you know they're actually really great friends in real life, because you can't fake that kind of chemistry. Honestly, when I heard that this was going to be like a buddy cop kind of movie and it was starring those two, I knew that it was bound to be a success. This movie is also pretty funny. Like, comedy is pretty subjective, and I suppose if you don't like edgy, sexually explicit Ryan Reynolds type humor, you might not like the jokes that were in this movie, and sometimes even I'm not a fan of that type of comedy because I feel like it's the laziest type of comedic writing out there. Just say something gross about some sexual act on, but not limited to, an open orifice on a person's body and say that that's what makes them look ugly.
You look like an avocado. Had sex with an older, more disgusting avocado. Yeah. Not gently, like it was hate fucking.
Here we go.
It's like he was giving birth anally, but they quit halfway through. They got the legs out and they said, you know what? I'm done.
And you pretty much got the formula for Deadpool humor, but I think we can all agree that it's at least better than some projects that were not even funny at all. And the cameos in this movie, oh boy. I mean, I thought I was in the know on a lot of things Marvel, and I felt like I was pretty well equipped to understand most of the cameos, but they really take stuff from the most obscure places. Like, when I say that you have to know your Marvel in order to get the most out of this film, I mean it. You need to know about the MCU and their TV shows. You need to know about the 20th Century Fox X-Men movies. You need to know about those really shitty superhero movies that came out in the early 2000s when the superhero genre was riding the hype of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. You even need to know about the DC universe, and you need to know some stuff about movies that weren't even made. It's crazy. And to that end, I guess you could kind of look at all this and think that a lot of the movie and the writing in this movie that's produced from these cameos simply revolves around fan service. And yeah, I mean, you're not completely wrong on that. A lot of this movie is very fan service heavy, and it's really made for people who have spent their whole lives growing up watching all things Marvel. And sometimes that type of fan service might get in the way of a better script, but sometimes, as you'll see in this movie, it actually lends itself to making the movie better. The fight sequences are also really fun. This movie gets really creative with camera work and special effects in order to elevate fight scenes to the next level. Particularly one fight sequence towards the end that was actually a really good one-shot. And when it comes to the fight scenes, this movie is about as gory as you remember when it comes to fights in Deadpool. The story in this movie isn't amazing though. I feel like the story almost gets bogged down by a lot of other stuff that was going on, like the fan service and the cameos and the chemistry with Reynolds and Jackman, and the villain is held up only by the fact that they're incredibly, and I mean almost overwhelmingly powerful. But overall, this movie was still pretty good. Like I said, sometimes I don't need a great story with a really complex, great villain. Sometimes I just want to have fun. And with all the fan service and cameos and humor and gore, and especially the relationship between Deadpool and Wolverine, this movie was definitely fun. It is not surprising at all that the best part of Deadpool and Wolverine was Deadpool and Wolverine. So if you like Deadpool and all the usual things that go into his movies, and you like Wolverine and want to see how he interacts with them, go see this movie. You probably won't be disappointed. 8.5 out of 10. Good movie. Please keep giving us stuff like this, Marvel.